Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. You've been asking for a deck tech that'll survive in standard post-rotation. Black-green Constellation could be that strategy. Let's get started. The mana base is complicated compared to other decks. The deck runs 7 temples, 4 Temple of Malady, 2 Temple of Abandon, and 1 Temple of Malice. For additional dual land support, there are also 4 Overgrown Tomb, 1 Blood Crypt, and 1 Golgari Guildgate. The land base is rounded out by 3 Mutavault, 5 forests, and 4 swamps. Normally, we would go through the creatures based on converted mana cost, but we're going to shake things up a bit, cause we're risk takers. Okay, anyways, the cornerstone of the strategy is Eidolon of Blossoms. To no one's surprise ever, the deck runs a full playset. The entire strategy is about playing enchantments, drawing cards, then just doing that over and over again until your opponent cries and forfeits from sheer embarrassment. For the deck to run effectively, you're gonna want, enchantments. 4 Courser of Kruphix seemed like a good decision. Arguably one of the best green cards in Standard, the Courser provides a lot of value. It's an enchantment, it provides 2 green devotion, you get free land, sometimes also life gain. It's just a dumb card that does everything ever. Another playset in this strategy is Brain Maggot. For 1 additional mana and 2 less life, you get to Thoughtseize your opponent and trigger Constellation. Sure, the Maggot can be destroyed and they get their card back, but if it isn't, you just got insane value for 2 mana. The Maggot is probably the most underestimated card in this deck. Because playsets for Doomwake Giant is a hilarious include here. It does pass the "oh, I'm an enchantment" test, so that's good. Beyond that, the body is decent at 4/6, but the real value is in his ability. That Constellation trigger destroys aggressive strategies. In a deck where you could have 2 or 3 enchantments coming into play on the same turn without an issue, -3/-3 is a big deal. Doomwake is an immediate threat as soon as it hits the board. Talk about a win con. The last enchantment creature in the deck is a 1/of Pharika, God of Affliction. She fits pretty well here. You get to make enchantment snake tokens with her ability, so, synergy. Also, meeting her devotion requirements shouldn't be too hard. Courser and Eidolon are both double green, plus there are some non-creature permanents that boost the count as well. Whether or not you decide to run Pharika is totally up to you. I've seen variations with her and without her perform perfectly fine. The last creature in the deck is Sylvan Caryatid. While it isn't an enchantment, it deserves the 4 slots it's given. 2 mana for an accelerant and a blocker that protects itself. It's an auto-include as far as I'm concerned, especially when you need to get to 4 mana as fast as possible. The deck runs 8 non-creature enchantments. The numbers are flexible, but these are usually the cards you want to include for this strategy, at least for now. We'll start with 3 Mana Bloom. The card is disgusting. It's basically made to be in this deck. You can even play the bloom for 0, return it to your hand at the beginning of your upkeep, play it again for 0, and just keep triggering Constellation over and over again. If you don't need to do that, this is a great mana sink that'll help you set up explosive turns down the road. 3 Underworld Connections shouldn't be a surprise. The enchantment triggers Constellation, provides 2 devotion, and draws you even more cards. Against any deck that isn't pure aggro or burn, Connections has real value. Being able to stay ahead of your opponent in card advantage is one of the easiest ways to win a game. Just saying, usually the person with the most weapons wins. Not always, but usually. The last enchantment in the deck is Primeval Bounty. Yes, it's 6 mana, yes, it's a mythic enchantment from M14, but hear me out. If it gets in play and your opponent does not have Golgari Charm, this takes over immediately. A lot of people think of it as a win more where you only get it out when you're already ahead, but the situation's quite the opposite. You slam this down on turn 4, 5, or 6 and just hope it sticks, no matter the circumstances. This isn't the card where you sit back and wait for the coast to be clear. This is what you use to call your opponent out if you don't have Brain Maggot. It requires an immediate response and guarantees a piece of removal in some form. You don't need Primeval Bounty to win, but you do need your Eidolons to dodge enchantment hate. It's priorities. The only spells left in the deck are 2 Abrupt Decay and 4 Heroes Downfall. These are pretty standard. The Decay are useful against anything 3 mana or less that isn't Sylvan Caryatid. We've been over this. Hero's Downfall's Planeswalker removal. Sure, you can kill creatures with it, but let's be honest, Dominate on turn 2 is just a super mean guy. Sideboard and matchups. Let's zoom through this. There are a lot of big decks running around. By that I mean Jund monsters, Big Naya, and anything else that has multiple creatures over 4 mana and planeswalkers. Against those decks, you become the control strategy. In other words, you're going to need more hand attack. Brain Maggot isn't enough. The best way to fight their threats is by never letting them hit the board. If you can't stop that, then make them bleed all over the battlefield. Bring in Thoughtseize, Ultimate Price, Doomblade, and Vraska if you have her. You can cut down on Mana Bloom, Abrupt Decay, and maybe an Underworld Connections or 2 depending on how fast they are. If they're running red, you can expect Mizzium Mortars post-board, which makes Brain Maggot a lot worse. Keep that in mind. Boros Burn will not go away, so let's address this issue. Underworld Connections is probably the worst card ever against this. Take it out immediately. Also get rid of Brain Maggot and Hero's Downfall. Their value just isn't in this matchup. Replace them with Duress, Doomblade, Bioblight, and basically anything that stops their cheap threats. Beware of Satyr Fire Dancer. He will wreck your whole team. The last card I'll suggest for this matchup is Golgari Charm. Most Boros Burn decks are running Eidolon of the Great Revel and Chained to the Rocks. This is enough to justify the charm's inclusion. Again, you're the control deck. Deal with their threats on the ground, duress their war leader's helix, play some coursers, stabilize, and happy fun time. The last matchup we're going to talk about is blue-white control, or really any control strategy. This might be your worst matchup simply due to all the dead cards you have game 1. Sylvan Caryatid and Doomwake Giant are pretty awful. Your all-star is Underworld Connections. If you can get one of these online, you might stand a chance. Bring in your hand attack. All of it. Thoughtseize, Duress, keep the maggots in, just everything. Golgari Charm isn't auto-include considering Supreme Verdict is still committing acts of domestic terrorism everywhere. I also really like Vraska here, but that's mainly because control decks aren't using as many enchantments anymore. She's a little more annoying for them to deal with if she sticks. Lastly, you have red mana thanks to the duels you run. Playing a few Rakdos' Return could come in really handy. That card wrecks control if they can't counter it. As far as post-rotation viability, you'll notice that none of the creatures are rotating, but a lot of the spells are. Hopefully M15 will come with a decent amount of replacements for some of the more generic things we need, like Doomblade and Duress. While Underworld Connections and Mana Bloom are both rotating, I don't think that's enough to entirely destroy the strategy. There's obviously a lot of synergy here. If you're interested in building something that may still be useful after September, I'm not saying 100% that this is what you're looking for, but a variation of this will probably exist. Remember to subscribe below for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source, I'm Wedge, thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.
What?